We're continuing our series on the neo-feminist agenda as a eugenics operation, what I call an example of epi-eugenics. Eugenics that is carried out through mind control. This is about the mind control specifically targeted at women to foment a war between the sexes. And that is the elephant in the room that hardly anybody wants to really get into and talk about on any kind of a deep level. Help people to understand the think tanks and occult groups that are directing this agenda, how it works, the type of conditions that it has led to in our society, and what we can do about it. But again, I said I've been studying this dynamic for years now, and I finally felt that the time was right to bring this information forward because I consider it a moral obligation to talk about this when I understand the dynamic that is going on so well, and very, very few people do. You know, neo-feminism constantly wants to tout the notion that, the sexes aren't equally as oppressed in our culture, that our freedoms aren't being destroyed all around the board, men and women. You know, they put out this notion that everything is because of patriarchy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we don't live in a patriarchy or a matriarchy. I mean, if you believe that, you've bought into the dialectic. We live, ladies and gentlemen, in an occultocracy. That's the nature of the ruling class that generally completely dominates and controls and enslaves the rest of the population. You know, people want to call it a patriarchy, a matriarchy, this and that, a corporatocracy, an oligarchy. It's an occultocracy. Maybe people have never heard that term before. Well, you have now. It means rule by the occult. Rule by occult means. And folks, if you think the occult, the dark occult, as I refer to the twisted variation, the cult aspects of occulted knowledge being used against people as a weapon, okay? The dark occult and dark occultists are comprised by both men and women, and they're comprised by people from every culture, every walk of life, every age, both sexes, and even just about every social income class. People think it's only the ultra rich. No, the occultists are not all rich. There's people who are involved in generational bloodline families of occultism, and they're not necessarily rich and powerful people. They're powerful when it comes to what they understand about the mind. We're not living in a patriarchy, folks. It's an occultocracy ruled by dark occultists. What I was talking about in the last segment is that, most of the inauthentic women in our society want either a doormat or a dominator. Because, again, they're in one form of brain imbalance or another. The vast majority of them are being conditioned to the left brain imbalance because that's masculinizing the woman. And it's also getting the woman to align her so-called values to the state and its so-called values. Put all this stuff in quotation marks, folks. And again, you could put the word woman in quotation marks. So, maybe that'll make it a little bit more palatable. I'm not really talking about a real woman here. You got to understand that. Every time I'm using the term woman when I connect it in with the neo-feminist agenda, you have to understand I mean the inauthentic, mind-controlled woman that has nothing to do with what a real woman is at all. Zero. And unfortunately, the inauthentic woman comprises the vast majority of women in our population. Yes, that is a generalization, but it is a true generalization. The social engineers have done their job well, and they know what they're doing, and they know how to do it. This is done through movies, television, magazines, media, the news, the daily news that people absorb. You just look through society, and I'm telling you right now, all you have out there is television watchers, folks. You got people who sit in front of that garbage device day in and day out, rotting their brain, and they think it's telling them something that resembles truth. The genuine being, the genuine human being, the genuine man, the genuine woman is not involved in any aspect of the game of control, whether on the side of being a dominator or being a doormat. And no genuine man or woman would want somebody to play either one of those roles. A real relationship involves control not being involved in it. And unfortunately, that's what modern day relationships have all become about. Control. But I have a question I want to ask the listening audience. I've done a social experiment over the last several weeks on my own time, where I asked approximately 75 people, 75 individuals, this question that I'm going to pose to a caller blindly right now. Okay? And I won't tell you what the results are. Okay? Let's actually go to the phone line so I could pose this question, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the social experiment that I did. Let's hear from Phil in Oregon. Phil, I know you may have called in to pose some other question, but I want you to hold off on that question for now, and I want to ask you a question, okay? And if you still have a question or a comment that you want to make, I'll bring you back on later, okay? You could hold, and I'll bring you back in. But I'd like to pose a question blindly to you, and could you just confirm I haven't asked you this question, have I?
No, I'm kind of excited.
Okay, we didn't talk at all or pre-rehearse this in any way, okay? I'm just bringing Phil in because he's the first in the call queue, and I just want to ask you something, okay? I've asked 75 people so far this question, all right, as a social experiment. In a modern-day interaction between a male and a female, after the social niceties and pleasantries are exchanged at first, could you tell me the first question, invariably, that the woman poses to the man in that interaction? Okay.
Thank you.
So, of course, the answer to that question is, what do you do for a living? What do you do to make money? Okay, that's the first question. Now, that's person 76 that I've posed that question to in the last several weeks. Now, before this last break, I think we've hit people with something that is a cornerstone in what I'm trying to explain. And I want to thank Phil from Oregon from answering my question live on the air blindly, okay, not knowing what I was going to ask. And the question was, and I've done a social experiment with this over the last several weeks, and I've posed this question to 75 people. Phil was number 76. And the question was, in an interaction in the modern world between a man and a woman who have just met each other, after they, if they're talking and they exchange pleasantries at the very beginning of the conversation, what is invariably the first question that the female will pose to the male in that interaction? And he answered, what do you do for a living? He worded it a little bit more colorfully. He said, what do you do for demonic coin of the realm, or something to that effect, for fake fiat Federal Reserve notes, But essentially the question remains the same. What is the occupation that you make money doing? Okay? Now, this being the primary foremost question that is posed, what does that say about what is going on in the modern conditioned female mind? Well, we'll get into that in a minute, but let me give you the results of my little social experiment that I've conducted here over the past few weeks. 100% of people that I posed that question to, 76 out of 76, answered the same way. What do you do for a living? 100%. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the listening audience, okay, If I went out on the street corner here in South Philadelphia, and I went on the corner and I just said, I posed the question to 100 people as they walked by, could you please tell me what color the sky is on a cloudless, weatherless day? During the day, when not at nighttime, but during the day, on a cloudless, weatherless day, what color is the sky? What color does the sky refract to the human eye? I will almost guarantee you that you will not get 100% of people to answer with the word blue. I will almost guarantee it. Yet 100% of people, you know how difficult it is to get 100% agreement on any question? I mean, you go out on the street corner and ask people, what planet is this that you are standing on? I guarantee you 100% of people won't respond with the Earth. I will almost guarantee it. As crazy as that sounds, trust me, you will find somebody that will give a different answer. To get 100% agreement on asking that many people anything is unimaginably extraordinary and says volumes about this social dynamic. It speaks volumes. And the reason for this is because the utmost thing in the mind of most people, and I will say this is true for both men and women, but it's overwhelmingly the case for the conditioned woman in society, and everybody will make excuses for this, and they'll have justifications, till the end of time, because they won't want to look at this dynamic honestly. They won't want to look at it honestly, what this means, what this says, societally, is going on psychologically within the minds of the vast, overwhelming majority of socially conditioned, socially engineered females. What they are saying is, my value system is based in money. Get as offended about it as you want. I don't care what anybody says about that. It's the truth. That is what that dynamic is saying psychologically. Now let me ask the listeners out there this question, okay? Could you pose a hypothetical reason for me to contemplate and for the other listeners to contemplate? Could anybody out there tell me why the first question that does not come up in conversation between a man and a woman interacting socially in our society, that the woman would ask to the man, or that the man would ask to the woman for that matter, is, do you know the difference between right and wrong behavior definitively? Or in other words, are you a truly moral being? Why isn't that the first question that's asked? Why isn't that the first question that's asked, ladies and gentlemen? Want to know why? Because most people don't give a damn about that. At all. At all. That's why. That's the truth. I don't need anybody to hypothetically answer the question. I know what the answer to the question is. Because their values aren't based in anything that is a real value. It's based on an illusion called garbage, nonsense, fake fiat money. That is nothing but a control system for the mind and behaviors and emotions. And I guarantee you will get tons of excuses and tons of justifications about that. I'm a misogynist for bringing that up. Don't you know? It's because money is the value system that they have been taught, and that's the value system they've retained. Morals? Oh, who gives a damn? I don't need to know anything about that, you know? Do you condone or support violence against other people by your support of the state? No, I don't need to know anything about that. Because invariably, 99.9% of these people all do support the state. They're statists.